Kana Navi relatives, Membi Watushka, Opi Miha. Welcome back to Iconic American Indian, the podcast. I'm your host, Opi Miha. Glad everyone is here today. So what I wanted to do today, before we get started, what's good, Radames Prince? Want to make a couple announcements real quick. One, as you guys have seen here lately, I really haven't been posting much on the channel. I'm going to be moving over to Mixcloud, and give me 1 second here and I will drop the link where you can find me at. I thought I had that set up and ready to go too. All right. Let me get that link real quick. What's good, Nighthawk? What's good to Real American Indians? Appreciate y'all being here. But here is the Mixcloud link for people to come over there and follow me. Just dropped it in. So that's where I'm probably, Scotty Saturn. What's good, brother? That's probably where I'll be doing live streams from here on out. But I wanted to come on YouTube first and just kind of give the announcement. Jay Smooth, how you doing? Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Hope everyone's been doing well out there. Getting in on the things that are important that we need to be taking care of right now. So appreciate all y'all for stopping through and checking me out. Of course, I am going to do a build on here today. So just letting some people get a chance to get in here. But that link that I dropped is where I will be doing live streams from here on out. I kind of want to branch away from YouTube to get some creative freedom. As you guys know, YouTube kind of has a little stranglehold on what you can and can't do. Ms. Zach, what's good, my brother? Also, too, if you are on or haven't had the chance, come on over to Clubhouse. We build over there pretty much every day. It should be available for iPhones and Android now at this point. Anyone needs a link or anything, just let me know, hit me up, and I'll get you on there. But yeah, so that's the announcement I wanted to make. Today I wanted to kind of go over some info off of the Free African Americans website. I covered this kinda a long time ago, but wanted to go through it. So we're probably going to be here for a little while. Of course, it's going to be me doing a whole bunch of reading, but y'all know how I get down. So that's what's up. While we're waiting on that, let me get some music going. I need to check on something real quick here. To make sure it's set up. So I thought I had the Mixcloud going with this, but I don't know if you can do both at the same time. So it's looking like you can do one or the other. So that's what I'm seeing so far. All right, y'all. So let me get the screen share going and we'll jump into the info. Hope everyone is doing well. Give me 1 second here, get this all set up, y'all. All right, there we go. Let me get the music going here. So let me get the, make it so it's not too loud. There we go. All right, y'all. So again, like I said, we're going to cover the Free African Americans introduction page. Just wanted to cover some info on there because I feel it's important. But this is the Mixcloud page. Let me see if I'm live on here. Normally it would have popped up by now if it was, so I'm not sure what's going on. Let me see here. Here's the page. again, just come over here and search my name and you'll find me, and just follow me or subscribe, and should get notifications. All right, y'all. So let's get into this. See here. So as you guys know, genealogy right now is probably more important than it's ever been. We're at a point right now where everybody's kind of starting to realize that they need to be doing this to find out who they are. You know, we got all kinds of different things that we're searching right now, land patents, all that stuff. So, Sweet Kajik, good to see you, sis. Thank you for being here. Oh, okay. Appreciate you. Yeah, I don't know what happened to the Mixcloud thing that says I was supposed to be live. So let me see. There I am. Okay, I'm there. Cool. All right, y'all. So it looks like we're good. All right, let's get into this info. But again, genealogy has never, been more important than it is now. We're seeing all the different sides of our family that we have. So that's what's making it pretty important. So let's get into this real quick here. So the introduction page is going to have quite a bit of information. Again, like I always tell you guys, dodge the hijacks. Understand and overstand what I'm reading to you. And yeah, let's get it. So the introductory page says these genealogies comprising the colonial history of the majority of the free African American families, dodge the hijack, of Virginia and North Carolina, illustrate the colonial and early national history of their communities. Okay. So it says most of these families were descendants of white servant women who had children by slaves. So again, dodge hijacks. Over 1,000 free children were born to white women by slaves in Maryland and Virginia during the colonial period. Many descended from slaves who were freed before the 1723 Virginia law, which required legislative approval for manumissions. All right, so we know what manumissions are at this point as well. It says the Chavis, Combo-Driggers, and Goen families were free in the mid-17th century, had several hundred members before the end of the colonial period. So if some of you have gotten back to the early 1700s, even into the 1500s, you still haven't seen that your people were enslaved, then more than likely they probably were not. Okay. So I just wanted to make that clear. Give me 1 second here. Oh yeah, definitely right a mess. Cherokee Toulouse Peace says, good to see you. Appreciate you being here. All right, y'all, back to it. Okay. So it says a very few African American families, dodge a hijack, that were free during the colonial period descended from white slave owners who had children by their slaves, less than 1% of the total. So the narrative that our great grandmothers were being raped by white men, not true. So and I think a lot of us at this point know that. All right, so we're going to move on. Many free African American families in colonial North Carolina and Virginia were landowners who were generally accepted by their white neighbors. Okay. Over 420 freeborn African Americans, dodged a hijack, served in the Revolution from Virginia. Over 400 from North Carolina and 40 from South Carolina. This we know as well because there's quite a few of us who have ancestors that we found that served in the Revolution. All right. Next one. Free Indians blended into the free African American communities. They did not form their own separate communities. So what this tells me, as we've discussed multiple times that they look the same. So you really couldn't tell the difference. If you're blending into a community, then that means you look the same. All right, moving on. Some of the light-skinned descendants of free African Americans dodged a hijack, formed the triracial isolates of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Louisiana. All right. So we know about these Melungeon families, if you live in these areas. And we may probably also, a lot of us have ancestors who tie into these Melungeon families. All right, so we're going to get into the Virginia origins. Let me check on the chat again, see how y'all doing. All right, peace to everybody who joined. Thank you for being here. Peace to everybody on the Mixcloud side if you're checking me out over there, but definitely get on over here and subscribe, please. All right, y'all. Back to it. So, Virginia origins. Most of the free African Americans of Virginia and North Carolina originated in Virginia, where they became free in the 17th and 18th century before chattel slavery and racism fully developed in the colonies. Okay. When they arrived in Virginia, it says Africans joined a society which was divided between master and white servant. Dodged a hijack on this Africans thing. A society with such contempt for white servants that masters were not punished for beating them to death in 1624. They joined the same household with white servants, working, eating, sleeping, getting drunk, and running away together. Now, right here in this little bracket, it says McElween Minutes of the Council, 1622 to 1632. 1670 to 1676, page 22 to 24, 466-7. And then we also have Northampton Orders, 1664 to 74, FOL.25, page 31, FOL.31. We got Wills and Orders, 1689 to 1998, 27A, Henning Statutes at Large, 117 Charles City County Orders 1687 to 95, 468. We got Westmoreland County Orders 1752 to 55, 4A. So this stuff in brackets are where you could physically go search the information that I'm reading. It says some of these first African slaves became free. So again, dodge the hijack. All right. We're not playing around with this African stuff no more. So we know this is nonsense. All right. Check on the chat again. Okay, we're good. All right, y'all. So Michael Gowen. So you guys have seen this surname. It could be spelled Goings, all kind of different ways. A Negro servant, was freed by the January 18, 1654 York County will Christopher Stafford. Okay. We got Emmanuel Driggers of Northampton County, was freed by 1661. And again, this is where you can find the info on him. All right. We have Emmanuel Cambo or Cumbo, Negro, was granted 50 acres in James City County on April 18, 1667, Patent Book 6, number 39. All right. Next, we have John Harris. Negro was freed in 1668 when he purchased 50 acres in York County. And then again, you can see the deeds book, 1664 to 72, 327. So, York County deed book. All right. Susanna Carsey was a free Negro living in Charles City County in 1677. Again, Order 1677-79, 216, 1687-95, page 9223. And Peter Carsey. So you guys can see the two different spellings. Was a free Negro living in Surrey County in 1678. And then again, the order numbers here where you can find this information. Okay, so at this point, we don't have to really guess anymore on what's being said. If we want to find the information, we can research it because it's showing it here, showing the sources. So we don't have to guess. All right. So it says a number of African Americans living on the eastern shore gained their freedom in the 17th century. There were at least 33 taxable African Americans dodged a hijack in Northampton County in 1670s who were free, later became free, or had free children. They represented 1/3 of the taxable African Americans in the county. So this number one is going to be this number one here, where it says titleable heads of household. So it says Bastian Kane and his wife Grace, Emmanuel Driggers, Bashaw Fernando and his wife Susan, Hannah Carter, John Francisco Negro, and Christian Francisco, William Harmon and his wife Jane, Anthony Johnson, John Johnston, John Kenji, Philip Mongan and his wife, Francis Payne, Negro, and King Tony and his wife Sarah. Okay, so it says titleables and white households. So we got John Archer, Negro, Peter Beckett, Negro, Edward and Thomas Carter, Thomas Driggis, Francis and Mary Driggis, Negro, Peter and Joan George, Jane Guzzle, Ann Harmon, Gabrielle and Bab Jacob, and Daniel and Isabel Webb. So again, here are the order books where you can find these names and the information. In the year 1677, there were 25 titleable free African Americans dodged a hijack and 53 titleable slaves out of a total of 467 titleables. All right. So next, let me see who we got in the chat. All right, Miss Liz Robinson, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Peace to you. All right, y'all, back to it. Here we go. So the Nickens family came from Lancaster County, where Black Dick, Richard Nickens, his wife Chris, and their children were freed in 1690 by the will of John Carter. So it says will 1690 to 1709. The family was associated with the Weaver family, descendants of 3 East Indian men who were free from their indentures in Lancaster County in 1708. So, as we know from reading this, this East Indian would be people of from the country that we now call India. All right, so we had these people blending into the Negro populations. Okay, so we have a number 2 here. It says C2. And this link here will actually take you to the Free African Americans part that talks about East Indians that were enslaved. So it says for a number of East Indians who were free persons of color and slaves in Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, they came over from England as indentured servants. All right, so that's something that we rarely ever talk about. I think I may have did one video over it, but they are tied into this Weaver family. Yeah. All right, y'all. So it says free African Americans were beginning to be assimilated into colonial Virginia society in the mid 17th century. Some were the result of mixed race marriages. All right, so let's check this out. So Francis Payne was married to a white woman named Amy by September 1656, when he gave her a mare by deed of jointure. And then where you can find this info, DW 1655-68 FOL .19. Next we have Elizabeth Key, a mulatto woman successfully sued for her freedom in Northumberland County in 1656 and married her white attorney, William Greenstead. Record book 1652-8 66, 67, 85A, 85B. All right, that's where you can find that info. Francis Skipper was married to Anne, a Negro, before 1671, when the Norfolk County Court ruled that she was tithable. And then it shows the order 1666-7573. Next, we have Peter Beckett, a Negro slave taxable from 1671 to 1677 in Northampton County, Virginia, married Sarah Dawson, a white servant, and had at least 4 children. Okay, again, in these brackets, you can find this information. All right. Hester Tate, an English woman servant in Westmoreland County, had 4 children by her husband, James Tate, a Negro slave to Mr. Patrick Spence before 1690. So just going through these names, I kind of realized something, that all these people who they say were enslaved, if you notice, the quote-unquote slave master does not have the same surname as them. So we can rule out that we got our names from slave masters. So I think most of us know that at this point. All right. Check on the chat. Jane Dawes, peace. Good to see you. All right, y'all. Let's see here. Let's see your streaming live on here. It should be doing both. Jane Dawes. So yeah, either one you want to come to is fine. All right, y'all. So it says, as slaves replaced white servants, the legislature passed a series of laws which designated slavery as the appropriate condition for Dodge to hijack African Americans. Okay. So it would probably be in anyone's best interest that hasn't done so yet to do your own research and due diligence on when Africans actually came here as slaves. All right. That's very important that you need to research that. All right, y'all. So also, too, as you come into the live stream, please bang the like button, please. All right, y'all. So in 1662, the Virginia Assembly enacted the law that a child was free or slave depending on the condition of the mother. The child of a slave by a white man was a slave, but the child of a white woman by a slave was free. Okay. And white men and women who committed fornication with a Negro were subject to twice the usual fine for fornication. Okay, now this information I just read can be found in Henning Statutes at Large, and then it's showing you the section where you can find that at. Another good book to read about what was going on in colonial Virginia. All right. In 1691, the Assembly prohibited the manumission of Negro, Mulatto, and Indian slaves unless they were transported out of the colony. It also ordered that white women who had children by Negroes or Mulattoes were to be sold as servants for 5 years, and their children be bound out for 30 years. Again, another Henning Statute at Large law. Page 86 and 87 is where you can find that in the third section, I believe. All right. In 1705, the Assembly revised the law of 1691 to include the children of Indian servants by a Negro or Mulatto, and extended the term of the children's indenture to 31 years. So there's a little number 3 here that we'll get to here in a minute and get some more info on this. They also all but eliminated the ability of slaves to earn their freedom by ordering that the farm stock of slaves be sold by the church wardens and the profit applied to the use of the poor. So again, another Henning Statutes at Large, Section 3, 453, 459 through 460. All right, so we saw that little number 3 up there. Let's see what that's talking about. It says, for an explanation of the change in the law which bound out mixed-race children in 1705, see Judge Green's remarks in the 1826 Virginia Court of Appeals case Gregory versus Baugh. So remember that. Remember that case, Gregory versus Baugh. Okay. And then brackets, it says Mitchie, Virginia Reports 250-2. Okay, so we know court cases are a good way to see what is actually happening and what kind of laws are being passed and different things like that. So Gregory versus Baugh, Virginia Court of Appeals case, 1826. All right. Check on y'all again. Fred, what's good, my brother? Good to see you in here. Appreciate you being here. All right, y'all. So let's get back to it. So in 1712, all 15 members of the Anderson and Richard families were freed and given 640 acres in Norfolk County, Virginia, by the will of John Fulcher, creating such a stir that the Legislative Council on March 5th, 1712, proposed that the Assembly, and let's look and see what the Assembly proposed, provide a law against such manumission of slaves. So they didn't like it that he was letting, that people were letting other slaves free at one time, which in time, by their increase in correspondence with other slaves, may endanger the peace of this colony. So sounds to me like they're scared, from enslaving people, that when they get free, that, something might happen to them. But again, this is where you can find the information about what I just read. All right. Let's see here. In 1723, the Virginia Assembly prohibited the freeing of Negro, Mulatto, or Indian slaves, except in cases where they had rendered some public service such as foiling a slave revolt, and amended the 1705 taxation law to make female Negroes, Mulattoes, and Indians, except tributary Indians over the age of 16, tithable. All right. It also ordered that any child born to a female mulatto or Indian serving a 30 or 31-year indenture also serve for the same age as their mother was obliged to serve. Okay, again, another hinting statutes at large. You see the section that you can go find this info. So there's a little number 4 here, so let's see what that's about. Number 4, Negro women set free were made tithable in 1668, but the 1705 law did not include them. Okay, hinting statutes at large again. Norfolk County officials did not enforce the 1723 amendment until 1736, when female members of the Anderson, Archer, Bass, Hall, Manley, and Price families were taxed. All right. So some of these surnames are going to be some of your family members in your genealogy. All right. Again, in brackets, it tells you where you can find this info. So this is Wingo, Norfolk County tithables, where you can look up what I just read. Surrey County probably did not enforce the 1723 amendment until November 21st, 1758, when the Surrey County Court presented 13 free African Americans dodged a hijack for not listing their wives as tithables. So they were the Banks, the Barclays, the Barlows, the Charities, the Debrecks, the Elys, the Peters, the Simmons, the Tans, the Waldens, and Wilson families. Okay, again, in brackets, you can see where you can find these orders. It says see similar cases for other counties. And again, it has the link where you can see the taxation portion of free African Americans. All right, y'all. Let's keep it rolling. Let me check on the chat real quick. Right, Rodimus. That's my whole point, brother. Because I can't with YouTube anymore, man. Anyway, let me check over here. on Mixcloud. So again, we are multicasting on YouTube and Mixcloud, so you can join in on either one. All right, y'all. So it says, despite the efforts of the legislature, white servant women continued to bear children by slave fathers through the late 17th century and well into the 18th century. From these genealogies, they were the primary source of the increase in the free African American population, dodge the hijack, from 1723 until 1782, when Virginia relaxed its restrictions against manumission. Over 375 families in this history descended from white women. Many of these women may have been the common law wives of slaves since they had several mixed-race children. 50 families descended from freed slaves, 29 from Indians, and 19 from white men who married or had children by free African American dodge the hijack women. Sorry, I keep saying that, but I got to say it. Because people write me comments and, get on me for not correcting this word. All right, so we got a little number 5 here, and we're going to see what that means down here in the bottom. It is likely that the majority of the remaining families descended from white women since they first appear in court records in the mid-18th century, when slaves could not be freed without legislative approval, and there is no record of legislative approval for their emancipations. Okay, so we had that little number 5. Let's see what we got. So it says the following 344 families in these histories descend from white women who had 483 children. So they're talking about surnames. So we got the Abel, Acree, Alford, Allen, Avis, Ansel, Anderson, Angus, Armfield, Armstrong, Arnold, Ashbury, Ashby families. Atkins, Atkinson, Avery, Bain, Baker, Balcam, Baltrip, Banks, Barber, Barnett, Burrow, Baston, Beckett, B. Bell, Berry, Bibbins, Bibby, Bluford, Bolton, Bond, Boone, Bowden, Bowles, Bowling, Boyd, Bright, Britt, Brooks, Bruce, Brian, Bryant, Bug, Bunch, Bundy, Burden, Burke, Burkett, Burnett, Burrell, Buss, Butler, Bird, Campbell, Kennedy, Carey, Case, Cassidy, Causey, Cawthor, Chambers, Chapman, Church, Clark families. Cole, Collins, Combis, Conley, Connor, Cook, Cooley, Copes, Corn, Cotance, Cousins, Craig, Crane, Cunningham, Cuddalow, Daly, Dalton, Davenport, Davis, Day, Dempsey, Dennis, Donathan, Driver, Duncan, Dunn, Dunstan, Dutchfield, Edgar, Elliott, Ellis, Epperson, Faggot, Farrell, Farthing, Fielding, Finney, Fletcher, Flora, Fortune, Fulham, Fuller, Gaines, Gallimore, Gillett, Gilmore, Grace, Graham, Grant, Gray, Grayson, Gregory, Griffin, Grimes, Gwen, Hagens, Hathcock, Hall, Ham, Hamilton, Hammond, Hanson, Harrison, Halls, Haynes, Heath, Hilliard, Hitchens, Hobbs, Hobson, Hodges, Hogg, Holt, Hood, Honest, Horn, House, Howard, Howell, Hubert, Hughes, Hurst, Jenkins, Johnson, Jones, Keemer, Kelly, Kent, King, Lamb, Lansford, Lawrence, Lawson, Laws, Lee, Lefevue, Lewis, Lively, Lloyd, Loxham, Locust, Lucas, Lugrove, Lynch, Lynham, McCarthy, McCullum, McCoy, Macklin, McIntosh, Madden, McGee, Mahorny, Manley, Mann, Martin, Mason, Matthew, Mays, Meade, Melvin, Miles, Mills, Morgan, Morris, Morrison, Moss, Murphy, Murray, Moreau, Neil, Newman, Nicholas, Norman, Norris, Norton, Oakey, Oliver, Overton, Owens, Oxendine, Palmer, Parson, Parker, Parr, Payne, Peacock, Pendergrass, Peters, Phillips, Pierce, Pittman, Pitts, Poe, Portions, Powell, Price, Proctor, Pryor, Pursley, Rawls, Range, Ratcliffe, Redmond, Reed, Rich, Ridley, Roach, Roberts, Robinson, Rollins, Ross, Rowe, Rowland, Ruffs, Russell. We got Saunders, Scott, Selden, Sexton, Shaw, Shepard, Simmons, Sims, Simpson, Slaxton, Smith, Sneed, Sorrell, Sparrow, Spillers, Spriddle, Spriggs, Spurlock, Stevens, Stewart, Stringer, Swan, Simons, Tate, Taylor, Thomas, Tooney, Tootle, Toyer, Turner, Tyler, Tyner, Tyree, Underwood, Vinny, Vinners, Verdi, Beers, Walker, Wallace, Warwick, Watkins, Webb, Welch, West, Whistler, White, Whiting, Wiggins, Williams, Wilson, Wynn, Wise, Wood, Wooten, Worrell, Wright, and Young families. It says it is also likely that the following families descended from white women. So what I'm going to take from this is, I don't know if it actually said that these women were white, and whatever information they're getting it from, they may have just been European. So as we know, Europeans aren't just white. Okay, so again, we have the Elstock, Alden, Almond, Ampey, Ash, Bailey, Ball, Bannister, Bartlett, Bartley, Battles, Berry, Beverly, Blake, Bowers, Bowman, Brandon, Branham, Britton, Brogdon, Burrell, Bird, Carpenter, Canton, Chapman, Chandler, Churchwell, Cooper, Coy, Curtis, Dean, Dove, Drake, Dungy, Drew, Dring, Dunlop, Evans, Fields, Flood, Flowers, Fortune, Fry, Garner, Garnis, Hamlin, Heartless, Harvey, Hawley, Hayes, Hearn, Hewlett, Hewson, Hickman, Hill, Hollinger, Holmes, Hull, Humbos, Hunt, Hurley, Hurst, Jackson, Jasper, Johns, Join, Lemon, Liggins, Lowry, Mealy, Meggs, Milton, Monaghan, Monday, Munn, Otter, Page, Phillipson, Pickett, Plumley, Powers, Pugh, Rawlinson, Red Cross, Richardson, Robinson, Rouse, Sawyer, Shoemaker, Spellman, Spruce, Teamer, Tolson, Travis, Twopence, Valentine, Walden, Wilkins, and Womble. So see endnotes for another 92 women who had mixed race children, for white women who had children by slaves in Maryland. See the Maryland one? Okay. So again, I feel like it is quite possible that these women could have been Black Europeans, but again, I would have to dig in to find out where they found that information saying that they were white. Let me jump back to the chat real quick. Yes, exactly, Rodimus. Appreciate that. All right. So families descended from freed slaves include so we're going to go through surnames again. Africa, Anderson, Andrews, Archer, Artis, Black, Bowser, Brave Boy, Brooks, Brown, Kane, Carter, Charity, Churton, Cole, Cook, Cornish, Cuffey, Cumbo, Demery, Dove, Driggers, Drury, Edwards, Fagan, George, Gowen, Gregory, Harmon, Harris, Jacobs, James, Jeffries, Johnson, Jordan, Leavener, Lewis, Longo, Lytle, Manuel, Mongum, Moore, Mordick, Newton, Nickens, Payne, Roberts, Cisco, Simmons, Tan, and Thompson families. And it says families descended from Indians who married into the free African American community population. So we got Bass, Bennett, Bingham, Busby, Cochran, Coleman, Cypress, Finley, Garden, Hatcher, Hatfield, Hatter, Hitter, Jeffrey, Jumper, Kenny, Lang, Lawrence, Logan, Month, Penn, Press, Robbins, I think that's, I don't know. T, Tyler, Vaughn, Vickery, and Whitehurst. Families descended from white men who married free African American women dodged a hijack include Barry, Collins, South Carolina, Combs, Davis, Haley, Holman, Ivy, Landrum, Lantern, Locklear, Marshall, Newsom, Norwood, Pendervis, Silver, Snelling, Skipper, and Sweat. All right, that's a super long list. So right here, it has a table, says descendancy of free African-American families dodged a hijack. In this genealogy, Virginia and North Carolina, and then it's showing the breakdown. So next we have male and female mulatto children. All right, so the law binding out the children of white women by men of African descent dodged a hijack until the age of 31 applied to their daughters and granddaughters as well. The law had a far greater impact on females than males. When men completed their indenture, they had the skills needed to earn a living in a trade or as farmers, even if some of their most productive years were behind them. Women who were bound out until 31 were likely to have children during their indenture. Each child added another 5 years to their service, in many cases making them servants for life and tying them to the slave population. All right. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick, y'all. Peace to everybody who just jumped in to the chat. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for being here today. All right, y'all, let's continue on. So I do have ancestry with these people here that I'm going to read about, the Gibsons and the Chavis. So Gideon Gibson, an apprentice son of Elizabeth Chavis in 1672, had descendants who attended Yale University as whites in 1850. Okay, so you guys tell me what you think that last statement means. So in brackets, again, we have Saperstein, the invisible line, 54-6. It says many of the apprenticed descendants of his relative Jane Gibson were illegally held as slaves for most of the 18th century. 13 successfully sued for their freedom in 1792 and 1795, but the remainder remained slaves for life. So this information does not show up in Ancestry, so I have not seen where they were slaves for life and all this other stuff. All right. Moving on to Miss Jane Webb of Northampton County, Virginia, sold her service to her master for 7 years in 1706 in exchange for marrying her master's slave and for his manumission at the end of her service. Okay, then it says you can find this in the loose papers in brackets here. It says her son Daniel Webb was a free Negro landowner in New Hanover County, North Carolina in 1765 and left a New Hanover County will in 1769. And then again in brackets DBE 274 original will at North Carolina Archives. Okay, that's where this info can be found. One of Daniel's sisters, Ann Webb, married a slave named Weeks, and they were the ancestors of the Weeks family of Northampton County. Another sister, Elizabeth, sold her service to her mistress for 16 years in exchange for marrying her slave, Ezekiel Moses, and they were the ancestors of the Moses family of Northampton County. Still, another sister, Dina, married Gabriel Manley, the mulatto son of a white woman in Northampton County. They moved to Norfolk County by 1735. Soon after the completion of his 31-year indenture, and were landowners in Bertie County, North Carolina by 1742. All right. Next, we have Jacob Chavis, a freeborn black man, owned over 1,000 acres of land and 2 slaves in Mecklenburg County, Virginia by 1774. His relative Sarah Chavis left a Charlotte County, Virginia will in 1811, asking her executors to free her husband. All right. Next, we have Charity Oxendine, granddaughter of John Oxendine, a mulatto who completed his indenture in Northumberland County, Virginia, had 2 children who were bound to Thomas White in Bladen County, North Carolina. White sold their labor to Thomas Ingalls, who took Charity and her 2 children to Mississippi, where he claimed them as slaves. Okay, and again in brackets, as Laxon making race in the courtroom, the legal construction of 3 races in early New Orleans. And we have 158, 170, 177, 234, 235, citing Oxendine versus McFarland, case number 2992. January 9th, 1812, records of New Orleans City, Parish Court, 1806-1813, City Archives, New Orleans Public Library, New Orleans, Louisiana. All right, that's where this information can be sourced. Several male members of the Oxendine family were landowners in Robinson County, North Carolina, and in adjoining North and South Carolina counties. So a lot of these names that I've been going through with this introduction, a lot of these surnames are found in a lot of the East Coast, Southeast Indian tribes. Just, for FYI. All right, moving on. Check out the chat real quick. See how y'all doing out there. Salute ancient history hunters. Good to see you, sis. All right. So the Virginia law binding children until the age of 31 was changed in October 1765 to bind the children until the same age as white children. That's interesting. But the change was not retroactive for those already bound out. And that's, again, a heading statutes at large. All right. Replacement of white servants by slaves. Okay, so let's see what they're going to say here. The replacement of white servants with African slaves began in earnest in 1660. Continued for more than a century. African slaves had still not completely replaced white servants by October 14, 1773 Dodge hijack, when the jailer in Prince William County advertised in the Virginia Gazette that he had caught a runaway white servant man. Committed to Prince William go a certain William Rawlings, who says he is the property of Francis Smith of Chesterfield. The owner is desired to pay charges and take him away. And he advertised in the same edition that he had jailed a runaway white servant woman. Committed to the go of Prince William, a servant woman about 26 years of age named Mary Richardson, has on a short printed cotton gown and a striped Virginia cloth petticoat. Okay, so we got a little number 5 here. Let's see what that's all about. If it shows up. And it might have been in that number 5 that we read above, so we're not going to go over that again. It says the same advertised in what edition identified runaway Reuben Dye as a Negro man. Okay. Excuse me. Elizabeth Bartlett, an indentured servant from Accomack County, was punished in July 1716 for running away with her mistress, Negro man named James. George Wallace, a white man, and Negro Dick were taken up as runaways in Westmoreland County in November 1752. Racial contempt for free African Americans Dodge hijack did not fully develop as long as they were white servants in similar circumstances. It was during this period, as late as the end of the 18th century, that free African Americans Dodge hijack were accepted in some white communities. Okay, definition of a mulatto. So here we go with this. Okay. On August 16, 1705, John Bunch, a mulatto, and Sarah Sladen, a white woman, petitioned the Council of Virginia to allow them to marry because the minister of Blishland Parish in New Kent and James City counties had refused to marry them. The Attorney General was undecided whether the petition came within the intent of the law to prevent Negroes and white persons intermarrying, because he could not resolve whether the issue begotten when a white woman by a mulatto man can properly be called a mulatto. That name, as I conceive, being only appropriated to the child of a Negro man begotten upon a white woman, or a white man upon a Negro woman. Dodge that, hijack, big time. We know better than we know better now at this point what mulatto means. So dodge it. All right. In an apparent attempt to clarify the matter of John Bunch's petition, Virginia passed a law in October 1705 for the clearing all manner of doubts who shall be accounted a mulatto. Be it enacted and declared that the child of an Indian and the child, grandchild, or great-grandchild of a Negro shall be deemed accounted, held, and taken to be a mulatto. All right. So we just read it. It doesn't mean it. We read it. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to be the dead horse. So we know what it means at this point. All right. This has been taken by some to mean that there was a community of people of mixed white and Indian ancestry in Virginia. However, no such community existed. And there was no mention of Indians in the October 1785 Virginia law, which was enacted specifically for declaring what persons shall be deemed mulattoes. All right. So apparently they're going to drag this out. All right. So we're going to keep going. Every person of whose grandfathers or grandmothers anyone is or shall have been a Negro, although all his other progenitors, except that descending from the Negro, shall have been white, shall be deemed a mulatto. And so every person who shall have 1/4 or more of Negro blood shall in like manner be deemed a mulatto. Hennings, the statutes at large. All right. But regardless of the legal definition, the word mulatto was most commonly used by the colonial county courts of Virginia and Maryland when they prosecuted thousands of cases of bastardy concerning the children which white women had by slaves of African descent, Dodge hijack, in the cases where their daughters and granddaughters were prosecuted. The few cases in which a woman had a child by an Indian were prosecuted under the same law as white bastardy, for which the penalty was a fine or corporal punishment. All right, so we are going to move on into African American communities. Dodge hijack. Y'all gonna get tired of me saying that, but I'm gonna keep saying it. A community developed in York County during the colonial period from the descendants of white women who had children by slaves. There were probably many white women serving the gentry in Williamsburg, the colonial capital. A community also developed in Petersburg when it expanded in the 1790s. There were already a number of families in Chesterfield, Prince George, and Dinwiddie counties, but they were joined by free African Americans, Dodge hijack, from other Virginia counties as far away as Accomack and Northampton counties on the Eastern Shore, as well as from several North Carolina counties. Their counties, their own lots. Okay. However, most communities developed around families who were able to purchase land or obtain grants for land on what was then the frontier in the early decades of the colony. The present-day county of Louisa was the frontier, and the Gibson, Bunch, Collins, Hall, Branham, and Donathan families formed a community there. So you guys remember, I have gone over these free Negro communities. We have one here in Ohio that my ancestors were a part of. So that's kind of what they're talking about here. So present-day Southampton County was a frontier at one time. Bertie, Craven, Granville, and Robinson counties in North Carolina were once the frontier. and later the back country of South Carolina, and then the states of Tennessee and Louisiana. Okay, so we got migration from their place of birth. So we know big time what this migration thing looks like because a lot of our families did it. So many families who descended from white women in York County moved to Southampton County and formed a community with adjoining Greensville County that spanned across the border into Northampton, Halifax, and Hertford counties, North Carolina. Where they were landowners, they included the Allen family, the Banks, the Brooks, the Bird, the Kennedys, the Hawley and Roberts families. Okay. The Archer, Manley, and Driggers families from Northampton County, Virginia, crossed the bay into Norfolk County, where they were in the earliest surviving list of taxables that began in 1730. The Chavis, Evans, Stewart, Going, Harris, Branham, Epps, Bunch, Cuddalow, Locklear, Macklin, Dunstan, and Valentine Valentine families were among the early settlers of Lunenburg County, which was formed in 1748. Let me grab a drink, y'all. All right. Okay. A free community developed in a part of Lunenburg from which Mecklenburg County was formed that spanned across the border into Warren and Granville counties, North Carolina. So that area, I do know the Haliwa-Saponi are located. So many free African Americans, Dodge hijack, originated in or moved to Surry County, Virginia, where their deeds, marriage bonds, and wills were recorded in the 17th and 18th century. They were the Banks, Blizzard, Bird, Charity, Chavis, Cornish, Debrett's, Jeffries, Carsey, Peters, Scott, Sweat, Tan, Valentine, Walden, and Wilson families. Description in the Surry County, Virginia Registry of Free Negroes in the late 18th and 19th century read, Armstead Peters, a mulatto man, aged about 56 years, born free of a yellowish complexion. James Williams, a mulatto man, pretty dark complexion, born of free parents, residents of this county, 35 years old. Joseph Bird, son of Joseph and Nellie Bird, free mulatto persons and residents of this county, 20 years old, 5 feet 5 high, bright complexion, short, thick hair, straight, and well-made. William Tan, a mulatto man and son of Jemima Tan, a white woman, late of this county. He is a bright complexion, has straight black hair, pretty stout and straight made, age 21 last September. And it says, since so many free African Americans, Dodge hijack, were light-skinned, many observers assumed they were the offspring of white slave owners who took advantage of their female slaves. Only 4 of over 600 families in this history were proven to descend from a white slave owner. All right, so that's pretty telling. All right. This is the Leavener family of Norfolk County were the descendants of a white slave owner who freed them in 1697, and there were 3 families who were the children of South Carolina planters, Collins, Holman, and Pendervis. Like their fathers, they were wealthy slave owners who were accepted in white society. All right. In 1782, Virginia relaxed its restrictions on manumission, and thereafter manumitted slaves contributed to the increase in the free African American population dodged the hijack. By 1790, free African Americans dodged the hijack were concentrated the counties below the James River in the northeastern part of North Carolina. And then in brackets it says heads of families, North Carolina, 10. This was a pattern of settlement similar to that of newly freed white servants. Land was available in Southside Virginia and in the northeastern part of North Carolina, at prices former servants could afford. All right, so again, we have a table here. It says a number of free African Americans in North Carolina and their population of total free population in 1790 by county. All right, so you guys can see the different counties there. And this is in North Carolina, it looks like. Let me check on y'all real quick, see how y'all doing out here. What's good, Tanari? Got a green. Peace to everybody that just joined. Appreciate y'all being here. All right, y'all. So, descendants of families which had been free during the colonial period continue to comprise a major part of the free African American hijack population due to natural increase. In 1810, the Goen family, free since the mid-17th century, headed 40 other free households with 105 persons in Virginia, 62 persons in North Carolina, 11 in South Carolina, and 10 in Louisiana. The Chavis family, free since the 17th century, headed 41 households containing 46 persons in Virginia, 159 in North Carolina, and 12 in South Carolina. All right. So let's look again here. It's going to give us another table. It says the number of persons in the households of families who had been free during the colonial period, 1810 census. All right, so we're going to see the family surnames, the number of free persons in each state. Okay. So a lot of these, we see a lot of origins in Virginia. You got a few that are, in North Carolina as well. But pretty telling here. All right. So let's check out the migration to North Carolina. Several free African Americans dodged a hijack, voted in the North Carolina General Assembly election in 1701. Thomas Blango was in Beaufort County in 1701, and Abraham Moore, a former slave from Surry County, Virginia, was in Beaufort County before February 16, 1716. When he sold 100 acres of the 320-acre tract he owned at the head of the West Branch of Town Creek. Abraham Moore's descendant became the largest free African American hijack family in the colonial Craven County. All right. So many of those who were free on the eastern shore of Virginia settled in Craven County. Thomas, Jacob, and Stephen Johnson were in Craven County by 1720. The Carter, Coops, Driggers, and George families were there by 1754. All right. James and Peter Black came to Craven County from Essex County, Virginia, where they had been freeborn. John Heath tried to sell them as slaves, but the Craven County Court intervened on their behalf in 1745. All right. So we got Ma, Nell, Sue, Sal, and Will Dove, Negroes, came to Craven County from Maryland with Leonard Thomas, who was trying to keep them as his slaves in 1749. But William Smith traveled to Maryland and proved their claim that they were freeborn. All right. Then again in brackets where you can see this information. All right. The Stringer family was in Craven County by 1755, the Connor family by 1760, the Perkins family by 1761, and later the Goddard family. John Smith was called a free Negro in September 1711 when William Wilson and his wife Sarah gave him 304 acres of the North River Swamp in Currituck Precinct for goodwill and affection. All right. Jack Braveboy, a freed slave, was living in Chowan County before July 17, 1716, when he was presented by the court. A Negro coming into this government with a woman and do live together as man and wife, it is ordered that the said brave boy produce a sufficient certificate of their marriage. And then again in brackets, the Hoffman Chowan Precinct, North Carolina, 1696 to 1723. All right. Next, we have Thomas Jacob and Stephen Johnson were Mulatts, taxable in Craven County in 1720. Hubert Gibson was taxable on 370 acres in Chowan County, North Carolina, in 1721. Gideon Gibson purchased 200 acres in what was then Chowan County on the south side of the Roanoke River on July 24, 1721. All right, next we got Thomas Carsey owned land in present-day Northampton County, North Carolina in 1726. Robert Locklear owned land in present-day Halifax County in 1738. John Locklear owned land in present-day Robinson County in 1752. And he and Major Locklear were mulatto taxables in Cumberland County in 1755. So again, you're going to start seeing your ancestors, people that show up in your genealogy who actually had land back in the day when they were supposedly slaves. All right. So James and Peter Black came to Craven County from Essex County, Virginia, where they had been freeborn. John Heath tried to sell them as slaves to William Hancock, but the Craven County Court intervened on their behalf on July 21st, 1745. All right. Let me see here. Had I read all this already? No, maybe I didn't. Okay. Just kind of repeating some of the stuff we just read. Okay. So Ma, Nell, Sue, Sal, and Will Dove Negroes came to Craven County, North Carolina from Maryland with Leonard Thomas, who was trying to keep them as his slaves in September 1749, but William Smith traveled to Maryland and proved their claim that they were freeborn. The Anderson Bunch, Chavis, Gowen, Harris, Hawley, Pettiford, and Turner families were taxable in Granville County by 1748. The Archer Bunch, Butler, Carter, Dempsey, Evans, Hall, Hammond, James, McDaniel, Manley, Nickens, and Weaver families were Bertie County taxables by 1751. The Manuel family descended from slaves freed in Elizabeth City County, Virginia in 1718, were in Edgecombe County by the 1750s. Okay, and it shows in brackets where you can find that info. Many of those who were free on the eastern shore of Virginia settled in Craven County, North Carolina before 1754. They were the Carter, Coates, Striggers, Johnson, George, and Perkins families, who were joined by the Moore, Black, Stringer, Spellman, and Dove families from Virginia, and the Goddard family. All right, the Bunch, Collins, and Martin families were taxable mulattoes in Orange County, North Carolina by 1755. The family histories of over 80% of those counted as all other free persons in the 1790-1810 federal census for North Carolina indicate that they were descendants of African Americans dodged a hijack who were free in Virginia during the colonial period. All right. So it goes on to say that free African American immigrants dodged a hijack were of sufficient number in 1723 that the North Carolina General Assembly received complaints of great numbers of free Negroes, mulattoes, and other persons of mixed blood that have lately removed themselves into this government, and that several of them have intermarried with the white inhabitants of this province. All right. That session passed a law which required free slaves to leave the colony within 6 months of their emancipation. And in 1741, the Assembly restricted manumission to meritorious service to be adjudged and allowed by the county court, and also required their removal from the colony. All right, again, Clark State Records. This is where you can find that info. Okay, so we're going to talk about land ownership and relations with whites. While some North Carolina residents were complaining about the immigration of free African Americans, their white neighbors in Granville, Halifax, Bertie, Craven, Granville, Robinson, and Hertford counties welcomed them. Neighbor depended upon neighbor, and whites may have been more concerned with harsh frontier living conditions than they were with the color of their neighbors, or their neighbor's color. It says the slave population on the frontier was much lower than in the settled areas of Virginia, so the presence of free African Americans dodged the hijack would not have posed a threat to most settlers. And several of these free African Americans dodged the hijack owned slaves of their own. However, land ownership was more likely the social equalizer for them and their white neighbors. All right. During the colonial and early national periods, at least one member of most African American families dodged a hijack in North Carolina owned land. Land ownership made for closer relations with the white community than with slaves. All right, so we got a little number 7 there. Let's see what that's talking about. So it says Goochland County, Virginia was an example of a location where free African Americans dodged a hijack, had very limited opportunities to own land, and they had closer relations with slaves. See Reginald Denham Butler, Evolution of a Rural Free Black Community, Goochland County, Virginia, 1832, PhD dissertation at Johns Hopkins University. 1989. Free African Americans in Maryland also limited opportunities to own land, and they generally had closer relations with slaves. But in Delaware, they had owned land since the 17th century, and those who had been freed since the colonial period were associated with the white community. All right, again, another link to look up that information. Okay, so the McKinney family, originally from Isle of Wight County, Virginia, was one of the leading white families in the area around the Roanoke River. Barnaby McKinney, member of the General Assembly from Edgecombe County in 1735, was witness to many of the early Bass Bunch, Chavis, and Gibson deeds. John McKinney called Canon Cumbo his friend when he mentioned him in his February 28, 1753 Edgecombe County will. Other leading white settlers who sold them land adjoining theirs and witnessed their deeds were Richard Washington, William and Thomas Bryant, Richard Pace, and William Whitehead. Arthur Williams, member of the General Assembly for Bertie County in 1735, and John Castello of James Castello, a member of the Assembly from Bertie County, had mixed-race common-law wives, Elizabeth and Martha Butler. All right. On November 9, 1762, many of the leading residents of Halifax County petitioned the Assembly to repeal the discriminatory tax against free African Americans, dodged a hijack. And in May 1763, 54 of the leading citizens of Granville, Northampton, and Edgecombe counties made a similar petition. They described their free Negro and mulatto neighbors as persons of probity and good demeanor, cheerful, contribute towards the discharge of every public duty enjoined them by law. All right. About 10 years later, a similar petition by 75 residents of Granville County included those of a few of the free African Americans of the county: Benjamin, Edward, and Reuben Bass, William and Gabia Chavis, Lawrence Pettiford, and Davy Mitchell, Negro. All right. In March 1782, a Continental officer observed a scene in a local tavern at Williamsboro, North Carolina. The first thing I saw on my entrance was a free mulatto and a white man seated on the hearth, foot to foot, playing all fours by firelight, $1 a game. All right. Again, in brackets, it shows where you can find this information. All right, let me see how y'all doing real quick. Online subscriber, appreciate you being here. Peace to you. Urban Rock Media, appreciate you being here as well. Thank you. All right, y'all. By 1790, free African Americans represented 1.7% of the free population of North Carolina, concentrated in the counties of Northampton, Halifax, Bertie, Craven, Granville, Robinson, and Hereford, where they were about 5% of the free population. It says in these counties, most African American families were landowners and several did exceptionally well. Okay, so next it's going to get into economic conditions and race relations. The Bunch, Chavis, and Gibson families owned slaves and acquired over 1,000 acres of land on both sides of the Roanoke River in present-day Northampton and Halifax counties. And the Goen family acquired over 1,000 acres in Granville County. William Chavis, a Negro listed in the October 8, 1754 muster roll of Colonel William Eaton's Granville County Regiment, owned over 1,000 acres of land, a lodging house frequented by whites, and 8 taxable slaves. His son Philip Chavis also owned over 1,000 acres of land, traveled between Granville, Northampton, and Robinson counties, and lived for a while in Craven County, South Carolina. And it goes on to say Edward Carter was the 4th largest Dobbs County landowner, with property valued at £23,292 in 1780. He was head of a Dobbs County household of 8 other free, a white woman, and 20 slaves in 1790. All right, so we got a little number 8 here. Let's see what that's about. Let's see. February 13, 1773, the Dobbs County Court recommended to the General Assembly that Edward Carter's daughters be exempted from the discriminatory tax against female children of African Americans. So we know it didn't say African Americans, so dodge the hijack. All right. In mid-18th century, North Carolina mixed-race families were counted in some years by North Carolina tax assessors as mulatto, and in other years as white. So they just told you. So we've seen this in our genealogies where one year someone's black, one year someone's white, one year someone's mulatto. Okay. So Jeremiah and Henry Bunch, Bertie County slave owners, were taxed in Jonathan Stanley's 1764 Bertie County list as free male mulattoes in 1764, but as whites in Stanley's 1765 Bertie list, and again as free mulattoes in 1766. All right. Not sure why they were changing that back and forth, but they did. So Michael Goen was taxed in Granville County as white in 1754 and was called Michael Goen Mulatto in 1759. All right, so again, they're telling you here how they played around with that, changing you from mulatto to white and all that other stuff. So John Gibson, Gideon Gibson, and Gibeon Chavis all married the daughters of prosperous white planters. Some members of the Gibson, Chavis, Bunch, and Goen families became resolutely white after several generations. Let's see, relations with slaves. While some free African Americans owned slaves and were accepted in white society, others married slaves and socialized with slaves. Hester Anderson, one of those freed in 1712 in Norfolk County, was the common law wife of a slave. She was an ancestor of the Artist family of Southampton County, Virginia, and several North Carolina counties. James Rebels of Cumberland County entrusted his executor with the task of making application to the legislature for his wife's freedom. All right, I got a little number 9 there, so we'll read that in a minute. Abel Carter was suspected of aiding a runaway slave. The November 14, 1778 issue of the North Carolina Gazette of New Bern advertised a reward for a Negro fellow named Smart. To suppose he is harbored about Smith River by one Abel Carter, a free Negro, as he has been seen there several times. All right. However, the majority were small farmers who married other free African Americans. Gotcha, hijack. Their marriages can be identified from colonial wills and tax lists, as well as the county marriage bonds starting in the late 18th century. So here's that little number 9 we read. Another member of this family, Hiram Rebels, first African American to be elected to the U.S. Senate, was born in Fayetteville, Cumberland County, North Carolina in 1822. All right. So that information can be found in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Ready Reference and Index. All right. So I'm going to skip some of this here because we've been going for a little while. Give me 1 second here, y'all. Because there was another part of this that I wanted to get to before we ended the live stream. So I've been reading for a while, and this, again, we're not, we weren't even halfway through with this. So this is a long introductory page. I'm going to copy it and put it in the chat for you guys if you want to go through it. But I wanted to get to the Indian portion of it. There you go. All right, y'all. So let me find this real quick here. Again, I appreciate everyone coming into the live stream to check me out today. Like I was saying in the beginning, this is probably going to be the official last live stream that I do on YouTube. Please get over to the Mixcloud link for myself. That's where I'll be doing live streams from here on out. So what it actually does is it records the live stream, but it'll keep the audio portion. So when you do try to go back and watch it, you're not really going to see the video. You're just going to hear me talking. So if you want to catch me live where I, show what it is I'm reading from, that's the best way to do it. All right, y'all, I'm getting to it. Almost there. As you guys can see, with a lot of this, a lot of our surnames do show up in here, and people that we have in our ancestry show up here as well. So, all right. So I'll start right here with the triracial Portuguese and Indian communities, because this is kind of where it goes into a lot of this information. Okay. So it says some of the lighter skinned descendants of these families formed their own distinct communities, which have been the subject of anthropological research. Those in Robeson County, North Carolina, are called Lumbee Indians. In Halifax and Warren counties, Haliwa-Saponi. In South Carolina, Brass Ankles and Turks. In Tennessee and Kentucky, Melungeons and Portuguese. And in Ohio, Carmel Indians. Okay. So it says several fantastic theories on their origins have been suggested. One is that they were from Raleigh's lost colony at Roanoke, and another that they were an amalgamation of the Siouan-speaking tribes in North and South Carolina. So, to me, it could possibly be both, but the Siouan-speaking one definitely, for sure. It says documents from a court case held in Johnson County, Tennessee in 1858 provide a detailed description of one such family. They illustrate the extent to which the family was accepted by the white community and the extent to which the family history was already clouded by myths in 1858. Joshua Perkins, born about 1732, the mulatto descendant of a white woman from Accomack County, Virginia, owned land in Robinson County, North Carolina. In 1761, moved to Liberty County, South Carolina. and in 1785 moved to what later became Washington County, Tennessee. So you can see the different places this man lived in, all right, in his lifetime. Like, these are different states. And here in brackets, it shows you where you can find this info. It says, along the way, succeeding generations of his family married light-skinned or white people. They owned a ferry, racehorses, and an iron ore mine, ran the local schoolhouse, and were election officials. However, conditions had changed drastically just prior to the Civil War in 1858, when Jacob F. Perkins, great-grandson of Joshua Perkins, brought an unsuccessful suit against one of his neighbors in the Johnson County Circuit Court for slander because he called him a free Negro. All right. So it says more than 50 witnesses made depositions or testified at the trial. Many of the deponents had known 3 generations of the family in North Carolina, South Carolina, or Tennessee. 16 of 22 elderly witnesses who had actually seen Joshua Perkins testified that he was a Negro, describing him as a dark-skinned man with sheepish wool and flat nose. All right. Black man, hair nappy. Some called Jacob, his son, a Portuguese, and some a Negro. New Old Jack, Joshua in North Carolina, or a Petey, right black or nearly so, hair kinky, like a common Negro. It says, however, 18 witnesses for Perkins testified that Joshua Perkins was something other than Negro, Portuguese, or Indian. They said little about his physical characteristics and those of his descendants. Instead, they argued that he could not have been a Negro and been so totally accepted by his community. It says, dark-skinned man resembled an Indian more than a Negro. He was generally called a Portuguese, living well, kept company with everybody, kept racehorses, and John Watson rode them. All right, mixed blood and not white. His wife, fair-skinned. They had the same privileges. Hair bushy and long, not kinky, associated with white people, associated with the most respectable persons. Some would call them Negroes and some Portuguese. So obviously, they saw how these people looked physically. He was known of the Portuguese race. 4 of his sons served in the Revolution. Jacob and George drafted against Indians. They came from and kept a ferry in South Carolina. See, they kept company with decent white people and had many visitors. One person said, I taught school at Perkins Schoolhouse. They were Portuguese, associated white peoples, clerked at elections and voted and had all privileges. All right. Some who testified in favor of the Perkins family had never seen Joshua Perkins and seemed to be genuinely confused about the family's ancestry. I was well acquainted with Jacob Perkins, second generation Perkins, a yellow man said to be Portuguese. They do not look like Negroes. I have been about his house a great deal and nursed for his wife. She was a little yellow and called the same race. Had blue eyes and black hair, was visited by white folks. One of the deponents, 77-year-old Daniel Stout, explained very simply how people of African descent could have been treated well by their white neighbors. Never heard him called a Negro. People in those days said nothing about such things. All right. So right here, number 17, it says the use of the term Portuguese for a mixed race person accepted as white was used as early as October 1812, when the Marion District, South Carolina Court of Common Pleas ruled that Thomas Higgins did not have to pay the levy on free Negroes because he was Portuguese. Thomas was the son of Zachariah Higgins, a mulatto bound out in Johnston County, North Carolina court in October 1760. And then it gives into some nonsense about the Y-DNA being from Angola, blah, blah, blah. All right. So it says many of these light-skinned communities were isolated from both the white and former slave population after the Civil War. Emancipation brought a lower status to many former free persons of color when the division of society went from free and slave to white and black. Mobile Hobson was a descendant of Ann Hobson, a white woman of Elizabeth City County and a slave. He was a very old man when interviewed by the Virginia Writers Project, which described him as Grecian, featured with skin as white as a white man's. He described events in Pequoson, Virginia, after the Civil War. So this is this gentleman talking. He said, "We used to go to the white church for the war, and arter they started schools. They say we was Injuns. Well, we was too, partly, but we wasn't no Negroes. First they say we couldn't go in the white church no more. Well, we stopped going. Then when they start this school, they say we couldn't go to the white schoolhouse. Some wouldn't go to the colored schoolhouse, and some would. My dad wouldn't let us go to the school with the Negroes, so we didn't get no schooling. When it come to marrying, we was in a worse fix. Couldn't marry white, and we wasn't admitted to marry color, or we wasn't aiming to marry colored. Started into marrying each other, and we've been marrying close cousins ever since." So that's from this gentleman's mouth, saying that, they were marrying their own relatives. It's just crazy. Anyway. And the study in 1886 described these groups and their relations with the newly freed slaves. The line of demarcation between the old and new Ishi is not only still plainly visible, but bids fair long to continue so. Associating but little with each other, intermarriage is not common. A free Negro who marries a free Negro who marries a freed one almost invariably loses caste and is disowned by his people, which is crazy. Okay. In their habits, manners, and dress, the free Negroes still resemble, as they always did, the poorest class of whites, much closer than they do the freedmen. All right. So says the old and new issue were terms used to distinguish African Americans free before and after the Civil War. The term probably referred to the new monetary currency issued after the war. All right, so let's get into Indian ancestry. Let's see how y'all doing real quick. Make sure everybody's good. All right, Dysphoria L, Kudameo. Good to see you, brother. Thanks for everybody being here. Appreciate y'all. All right. Let's see if I missed anybody else. Al D. Hayden, peace. Scroll up a little bit here. Miss Sherry Graham, it's an honor. Thank you for being here. All right. Hopefully we're still live, because I just saw something that said I was having some connection issue, but looks like we're still good. So again, everybody, I am streaming here on YouTube and Mixcloud. So if you haven't subscribed to me on Mixcloud, please do so. And bang the like button when you come in. All right, so let's get into Indian ancestry. So during Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, and for many decades afterwards, thousands of Indians were enslaved as the English colonists expanded their lands to include more of Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And we probably know at this point that number is probably a lot higher than a few thousand. All right, it says over 30,000 Indians were sold into slavery in South Carolina alone, mostly to the West Indies and New England. And then in Blavatsky's Gregory, Making Indians White, and my brother Kudameo just sent me a build he did on this, so I much appreciate it, Kudameo. The judicial abolition of native slavery in revolutionary Virginia and its racial legacy. University of Pennsylvania Law Review. And this link here will actually pull up the actual PDF if anyone's interested in seeing that. So I can see if I can copy this. Hopefully it puts it into the chat properly. Let me do that real quick. Let's see here. Back for What's Mine. Peace, brother. Good to see you. Hopefully that link works for you guys. Okay. So it says, but some were also held in the same household as African slaves, dodged a hijack in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Maryland, many as small children, perhaps because they would not have been able to escape or know where to escape to. Virginians were already bequeathing Indian slaves to their heirs for life in 1682, when Virginia passed a law which allowed masters to purchase Indians from neighboring tribes and any other trafficking with us for slaves and hold them as slaves for life. And again, this is in Henning Statutes at Large, section 2491. It says, thus, when Indian children were brought into court in Henrico County, Virginia in 1683, a year after the law's passage, to record their age in order to know when their master should start paying taxes on them. The court noted whether they had come in amongst the English before or after the 1682 law making Indian slaves. 31 Indian children who came in after the law were treated as slaves, and 22 who came in before were treated as servants to serve until the age of 30 years. It's interesting. So it says another 34 Indian children were brought to court to have their ages adjudged in Charles City County Court between 1687 and 1695, and another 30 in Henrico County between 1691 and 1712. So again, here in brackets, you can see the different city orders. You got your Charles City orders, your Henrico orders, for what we just read. About 1% of the taxable slaves in Surry County, Virginia, were Indians between 1680 and 1700. Again, in brackets, Magazine of Virginia Genealogy, volumes 22 to 24. And Indian slaves were listed in the inventories of the estates in Virginia, North Carolina, and Maryland throughout the colonial period. Again, another link that's in this website that you can get to. Okay, so number 18 here says Daniel Jennifer's Negro slave called Old Daniel had a child by his Indian slave Nanny before April 15, 1687, when Jennifer made his Accomack County will. Their child Annis was called a Musty. Young woman in December 9th, 1697, Accomack County court case. Mary Scarborough's slave Sango had an Indian wife named Molo. When Scarborough made her December 19, 1691, Accomack County will. The Henrico County Court bound out his apprentice, Joe a Mulatto, the son of Nan, an Indian woman, in November 1740. And Tom, a mulatto or musty, petitioned the Henrico County Court for his freedom in January 1737, testifying that he was the grandson of a white woman but was held as a slave by Alexander Trent. In June 1722, Peg, a mulatto woman servant, whose mother was an Indian, was ordered by the Henrico County Court to serve her master until the age of 31 years. All right. So it says, however, about the year 1772, Virginians came to have a different view of Indians. They were not equal to whites, but they were not as inferior as Africans dodged a hijack, and thus should not have been enslaved. Only Africans dodged a hijack were of such a low class that they deserved slavery. This was conveniently at a time when there were no Indians available to be enslaved, and there were no longer a military threat to the colonists. This also helped confirm in the minds of the colonists the justification for enslaving Africans. All right. So the courts took the view that anyone who could prove descent from an Indian woman should therefore be set free. The Coleman family was probably the first to be freed under this new interpretation of the law. They were described as having dark brown complexions with short, bushy hair when they obtained certificates of freedom in Petersburg. And that's the Registry of Free Negroes. After 3 or 4 generations of living with African slaves, dodged a hijack, descendants were more African than Indian. Dodge the hijack. All right. The Finleys were another such family. Fortunately, the testimony from their trial has survived, and we can trace them back to 2 children brought to court by their master to have their ages adjudged in Henrico County in 1712. Testimony at the trial said that their master brought the 2 children back to Virginia from a trip he took beyond Carolina. Their descendants were described as having anywhere from dark brown to yellow complexions. The freedom suits were discontinued about 1820 because testimony about what happened well over 100 years previous was second and third hand, and most descendants were by then physically indistinguishable from other slaves. All right, so now we got the not Negro law. Let me grab a drink real quick, y'all. All right, y'all. Let's get back to it. Appreciate everyone being here. All right, y'all. So let's talk about this not Negro law. So the concept of Indians having a higher status than African resurfaced in 1833. So again, dodge a hijack. The year after Virginia passed very harsh restrictive laws against free African Americans. In response to this, a Norfolk County legislator helped pass a law which allowed very light-skinned people to register as Indians. The thinking behind the law was that people who were practically white should not have to suffer the indignity of registering as free Negroes. And this in brackets says acts passed at the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Rotham, notorious in the neighborhood, is where you can find this info. Of the families that were registered as such, only the Bass family had any Indian ancestry. So that's their opinion. You got to do your genealogy to find out, what your ancestry is. And that was from 6 generations back. Ironically, Norfolk County did not apply this law to the Cook family, who actually had a court ruling that their freedom was based on descent from an Indian woman. They were apparently too dark-skinned. Usage of this law was largely confined to the Bass family and their relatives in Norfolk County, such as the Weaver family shown below. Other counties continued to register very light-skinned people as bright mulattoes, as Norfolk had before 1833. So I've showed this picture before. The gentleman sitting here in front, the older gentleman, he is a Weaver, and we read about the Weavers coming from an East Indian descent. So the people who come from India. And this gentleman back here is Augustus Bass. All right. So we have heard from other people, talking about their European connection. All right. So now we're going to get into Robinson County, North Carolina. The concept of Indians being superior to and a separate group from African Americans reemerged again in 1885, when the Democrats were trying to take control of the legislature in North Carolina and make it a Jim Crow state. All right, this say Democrats, by the way. We're not going to get into that today. It says the state was about equally divided on the issue, as was Robinson County. Hamilton McMillan, a Democrat from Robinson County, took advantage of the fact that the African Americans who had been free since colonial times resented the loss of status they experienced when they had to attend the colored schools with the former slaves. In order to secure their votes for the Democrats, he helped pass a law which allowed them to have their own separate schools. And then we have here in brackets, blue, the Lumbee problem. And then it's got some pages marked here. So that's another book you guys can check out, PDF. So it goes on to say, McMillan explained the new school system by revising the then popular historical novel about Virginia Dare being raised by Indians after the massacre of the colonists in the lost colony of Roanoke in 1587. And then here in brackets it says, Mason Mary, the White Doe Chase, a legend of olden times, are living and are dead. All right. He revised the story to say that the colonists who had been last seen 300 years previous had mixed with friendly Indians and were the ancestors of those who had been free in colonial Robinson County. He named them Croatan Indians, after the island near Roanoke Island that the colonists were presumed to have fled to. White residents of Robinson County ridiculed the idea by shortening the name to Cross after Jim Crow, and the community changed the name to Cherokee Indians of Robinson County. So, this is going to change again. So it says in 1913, Sioux Indians of Lumber River in 1934 and 1935, and they were recognized by the U.S. Congress as Lumbee Indians in 1956. After many generations, they developed an Indian identity. The actual ancestry of the community in Robinson County is as follows. Mixed-race families from Virginia were among the earliest settlers of Bladen County, North Carolina, from which Robinson County was formed. In 1787, they were described in a report to the colonial governor of North Carolina in 1754. 50 families, a mixed crew, a lawless people, possesses the land without patent or paying quiet rent. Shot a surveyor for coming to view vacant lands being enclosed in great swamps. No Indians in the county, so that's just this guy's opinion. He doesn't know, again, their ancestry. The colonial tax list for Bladen County listed the following mixed-race families as mulattoes from 1768 to 1770. Okay, so we got Brave Boy, Carter, Chavis, Clark, Cox, Cumbo, Demery, Doyle or Dial, Drake, Evans, Going, Groom, Hammonds, Hayes, Hunt, Ivy, James, Johnston, Jones, Carsey, Lamb, Locklear, Lowry, Overton, Oxendine, Perkins, Phillips, Russell, Skipper, Sweeting, Walden, Wharton, Wilkins, and Wilson. All right. So it says here only one person was called an Indian, Thomas Britt. And then again in brackets, it has a book that it references. It says a complaint of October 13, 1773 listed free Negroes and mulattoes living upon the King's land, graciously assembled together. In Bladen County, Captain James Ivy, Joseph Ivy, Ephraim Sweat, William Chavers, Clark Bingham Dees, William Sweat, George Sweat, William Groom, Senator William Groom, Junior Gideon Grant, Thomas Grooms, James Frace, Isaac Vaughn, looks like Solomon Stapleton, Edward Locklear, Tylee Locklear, Major Locklear, Reacher Groom, and Esther Carsey. Actually, most of these families were either granted or purchased land in Bladen County during the 18th century. John Groom entered 200 acres in 1748. John Locklear entered 100 acres in 1752, and Major Locklear was living on 100 acres in 1753. When a land entry was recorded for that land in the name of two white men, Thomas Ivy recorded a land entry for 150 acres in February 1754, and in December 1754, Robert Swett was granted 150 acres, which was sold by Philip Chavis in 1768. It says a representation from Bladen County to the House of Assembly on December 18, 1773 complained of the number of free Negroes and mulattoes who infested that county and annoy its inhabitants. And a white man named Jacob Alford petitioned on behalf of the inhabitants of the upper section of Bladen County that he and his neighbors lived in constant dread and fear of being robbed and murdered by a set of robbers and horse thieves, mostly mulatto, who numbered about 40. Winslow Driggers was a notorious leader of one of the outlaws' backcountry communities in South Carolina that bordered Bladen County and which were said to consist of both white and mixed-race men. In the fall year 1770, he escaped from jail in Savannah, Georgia, and returned to the area of the Little Petey River in North and South Carolina, where he continued his outlaw career. The following year, a band of ex-regulators captured him at his hideout near Drowning Creek and used the provisions of the Negro Act as an excuse to hang him on the spot. All right. It says most of the families listed in the 1790 and 1800 Robinson County census as other free are traced in this history back to persons referred to as Negroes or mulattoes in Virginia or North Carolina. It says these are the Branch, Brave Boy, Brooks, Carter, Chavis, Cumbo, Dunn, Evans, Gowan, Hammonds, Hogg, Hunt, Jacobs, James, Johnston, Carsey, Locklear, Manuel, Newsom, Oxendine, Revel, Roberts, Swett, and Wilkins families. So if you just go back through the start at the 1790 census for this particular county, of course, you're going to see these people more than likely listed as other free. But as you start getting to the more current, 1800 census, you'll start to see where they were labeled as, Negroes and mulattoes. And then as we get to current times, Indian. So it says it appears from court records that free African Americans in Robinson County were at times accepted by the white population. They attended white schools and churches, voted and mustered with whites. On April 1st, 1805, the Robinson County Court appointed James Lowry overseer of a road, a position usually reserved for whites. However, they lost many of their rights with the passage of North Carolina's Free Negro Codes from about 1826 to 1850. Charles Oxendine was indicated by the Robinson County Court for assault and battery and fined $15. When he failed to pay his fine, the court ordered the sheriff to hire him out since he was a free Negro. Oxendine appealed the ruling to the North Carolina Supreme Court in 1837 on the basis the law unconstitutionally discriminated against free persons of color. All right, during the Civil War, 2 cousins of the Lowry family of Robinson County were murdered while absent from fortification duty. The white man suspected of their murder was himself murdered shortly afterwards. A few months later, in March 1865, a grandson of James Lowry, Allen Lowry, and his son William were murdered by the white home guard on the suspicion they were aiding escaped Union prisoners. The following month, Hector Oxendine was murdered on the suspicion he helped General Sherman when he marched through Robinson County. All right. In response to these acts, Henry Berry Lowry, a son of Allen Lowry, led a band of armed men who killed or drove from the county those who were involved in the murders. The band remained at large for nearly 10 years despite the determined efforts of the White Home Guard, federal troops, and huge rewards for bounty hunters. All right. It goes on to say the New York Herald sent journalist Alfred Townsend to the county to report on the band. He described the area where most of the former free persons of color were living as Scuffletown. The mulatto capital spreads besides 3 or 4 miles on both sides of the track and is surrounded on 3 sides with swamps. A tract of several miles covered at wide intervals with hills and log cabins of the rudest and simplest construction, sometimes a half dozen of these huts being proximate. The people have few or no horses, but often keep a kind of stunted ox to haul their short, rickety carts, and a little old lever well of the crudest mechanism. The cabin is found built of hewn logs, mortised at the end, the chinks stopped with mud, the chimney built against one gable on the outside of logs and clay with sticks and clay above where it narrows to the smoke hole. There is beside the large chimney place a half barrel sawed off to make lye from the wood ashes, and the other half of the barrel is seen to serve the uses of a wash tub. The mongrel dog is always a feature of the establishment. The 2 or 3 acres of the lot are generally plowed or planted in potatoes or maize. The bed is made on the floor. There are two or three stools, only one apartment comprising the whole establishment. Just such a place at the above is the house of Henry Berry Lowry, the outlaw chief, except that being a carpenter, he has nailed weather strips over the interstices between the logs and made himself a sort of bedstead and some chairs. His cabin has 2 doors opposite of each other. The Scuffletowners go out to work as ditchers for the neighboring farmers who pay them magnanimous wages of $6 a month. The above picture, while true of the majority of Scuffletown, is not justly descriptive of all the Oxendines are all well-to-do, or where before this bloody feud began, and the Lowrys were industrious carpenters, whose handiwork is seen at Lumberton, Shoe Hill, and all around the region. The whites hated the settlement because it was a bad example to the Negroes. But most people were Baptists or Methodists, and nearly all owned their own homesteads. All right. So it says number 19 that Scuffleton was the term for the center of the Lumbee settlement. All right, he goes on to say he described Henry Berry Lowry as a yellow fellow, Indian looking, of mixed Tuscarora, mulatto, and white blood. Has straight black hair, like an Indian, one of the handsomest mulattoes you ever saw, and stated that the Lowrys and their blood relatives showed Indian traces, while Scuffleton at large is mainly plain and romantic mulatto. He described the predominantly white county seat of Lumberton as wholly built of unpainted planks or logs, which have become nearly black with weather stains. The streets are sandy and without pavement of either brick or wood. Those started for the purpose of extracting revenge for the murder of the members of the Lowry family. The band also demonstrated that the community could not be intimidated by whites. Much of the white community was in fear of the band, but their leader was quoted as saying, "We don't kill anybody but the Ku Klux." All right. It says the end of the band came in 1874 with the death of Steve Lowry, but the establishment of a self-defense force helped their community maintain some political power at a time when white aggregation prevented many African Americans from exercising their political rights. In 1875, Miss Mary C. Norman, a resident of Robeson County whose husband was killed by one of James Lowry's great-grandsons, wrote about the band in the Lowry History. She described the mixed-race population of Robeson County as free Negroes or mulattoes who had more or less a swarthy yellow tinge of color, some whiter than others. They had married and intermixed with each other so often that the distinctive features of one was representative of all. She surmised that runaway slaves had taken up their abode in this large free Negro settlement, and that this was partly responsible for the fact that Robeson County was one of the largest free Negro settlements in North Carolina. In 1909, the Lumbee Publishing Company purchased the rights to Norman's book and removed all instances of the word mulatto and Negro and replaced them with the word Indian. That is interesting. Or removed them altogether. James Lowry became a respectable Indian. The Chavis, Dial, and Oxendine families were no longer mulatto. All right, y'all. So I'm probably going to leave it right there. There's a little bit more to this, but we'll cover it at another time because, again, we've probably been going for at least 2 hours. So, again, I appreciate all y'all coming out and rocking out with me. Again, I'm going to be over on Mixcloud doing the live streams for anybody who, didn't hear it at the beginning of the stream. I happen to mention that. Let me drop the link for y'all real quick before we go. Miss Mika, peace to you. Chief Real Rat. Let's see. Who else we got in here? All right, y'all. So, yeah. So, I think we're going to go ahead and shut it down now. Yeah, definitely Kudameo. Definitely dig on Robeson County. And when you research it, they kind of spell it like Robeson. I'm going to throw that in there too. Yeah. So they kind of spell it like Robeson. I don't know if that showed up in there. Yeah, there it is. But definitely dig on that county. I did some live streams a while back where I was, kind of going through their census records from the beginning to now. And you can definitely see the changing from Negro, mulatto to Indian. So that's definitely one of the counties where that is definitely happening. But again, y'all, it's been good to get up in here and do a live stream for y'all. But like I said, trying to get away from YouTube a little bit because they're very restrictive on what you can and can't play on your videos and all that stuff. So appreciate y'all for rolling up in here with me. So thank you. Let me stop the screen share real quick. And I guess I'll see everyone, on the other side over on Mixcloud. So y'all take care of yourselves, all right? Just keep on plugging away. Keep on doing your genealogy to find out who you are. And, we're making progress. All right, peace. Kana Hop Nappy relatives. And Biwa Pahushka. Obi Miha, Obi Miha, Obi Miha. Obi Miha.
This is a dangerous group that we're dealing with now.
That's the hijack again. Hanahapi relatives. They had no idea their ancestors had been free. They had no idea their ancestors had been free.